Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about somatics. So we're going to be talking about getting back into the body. We're going to be talking about like the mind-body connection, the effects that training can have on your mental health, and why I think that pushing yourself really hard in the gym is one of the best things that you can do for your brain, especially if you are neurodivergent. So when we talk about somatics, what do we actually mean? In broad strokes, it is usually in reference to some kind of embodied physical experience to get back into the body, to kind of access our physical self and to use that as a way to address issues, whether that's physical health or mental health, just as a general way of reconnecting with the self. Generally, somatic practices place a really high emphasis on your own experience and your own perceptions of your own body and how you can use that to relate to the world around you. A lot of the work and research and study that has gone into the field of somatics has been in what I would usually call like softer or more like subjective forms of movement. So that's stuff like Tai Chi, yoga, dance. These things are all great, they work, they've done a lot of good for a lot of people. My ex was super into it, so I'm just inherently a hater. But I am a little bit more interested in a little bit more of a meathead approach to somatics. And I think that a really good place to start looking at this is actually in the movement that was almost like a precursor to the modern somatics movement, which was the physical culture movement. So what we would call the physical culture movement today was actually a lot of different movements, a lot of different groups and approaches to a popular version of fitness. When we refer to the physical culture movement, we're usually referring to these groups in the US in like the mid 1800s onwards. A lot of these groups had very different approaches to fitness, but what they all had in common was this idea of bringing physical activity back to common people as an everyday habit. Around this time, those mid 1800s, we started to see, at least in this context of the United States, a rise in sedentary work. So more people than ever before were living lives where manual labor was very separate from their everyday existence. And so with this rise in sedentary living, we saw a subsequent rise in what was then called diseases of affluence. So this is things like diabetes, heart issues, general lack of physical capacity because of a lack of movement in your everyday life. And as a response to this kind of general reduction in population scale physical capacity, these physical culture clubs and this broader movement had a lot of different methodologies to try and address this. And these would range from gymnastics, combat sports, traditional folk games and folk events, traditional folk dances, army-style calisthenics drills, a lot of organized exercise, because we have to realize that at the time, as far as like everyday people go, structured exercise wasn't necessarily that common. So in this societal context where fewer and fewer people had to move and had to physically work to maintain a basic standard of living, we saw these physical culture clubs arise as a response to that. And if that societal context sounds at all familiar, this widespread inactivity and high prevalence of sedentary work and sedentary lifestyles, it's probably because it is, because for a lot of us, especially living in the United States or like myself in the UK, this is a very common way of life as well. Even more so than the mid 1800s, more and more and more of us have very sedentary, stationary lives. We might work in an office, or a lot of us even are working from home, and our physical day-to-day existence is very, very divorced from our ability to move and our ability to function on that baseline level. And this is just one factor that's contributed to a lot of population size health issues, such as the obesity crisis and just a general lack in a lot of cases of physical capacity for most people. And while I think that the physical health benefits of regular structured exercise are insanely good, I feel like, at least on some level, especially if you're watching fitness content like this, we probably already know that. We're already on the same page of that. So I'm actually going to speak more on something that I think is a little bit less discussed, at least I think in a productive way, which is the mental health benefits of regular movement. So again, obviously I'm speaking from the context of someone that lives in the UK, which is on a global scale an insanely privileged position to be in. But for myself and for a lot of people who I work with, or my clients and just people in my community, like I said earlier, our physical subsistence, like the things we need to do to live and to exist, is very, very divorced from our physical abilities. If we want to eat, we go to the shops and we buy some groceries. If we want to drink water, we can just go to the kitchen and turn on the tap. And to clarify, this is a good thing. I don't think that we should go back to subsistence farming and dying in our early 30s from preventable diseases. We are very lucky to live in this societal context in a lot of ways, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. But I do think that there is a side effect of this very convenient way of life, which leads us to get very divorced from the physical reality of our bodies. No matter how smart and how advanced we get, at the end of the day, we are still animals. We still have a physical form that needs stimulus and needs to move. We aren't, and we can never be, completely intellectual creatures. We still exist in the physical world and we interact physically with it. I think in the absence of that regular expression of physicality, bad things are going to come downstream from that for a lot of us, especially in terms of mental health. I think our ability to move and to navigate the world around us is something really core and fundamental to who we are as people and to what we are as animals. He said a lot of stupid shit, don't get me wrong, but one thing that I think it's Mark Ripperto said, which I do agree with to a point with some obvious caveats, is that humans are not physically normal in the absence of hard physical effort. And this is why I'm trying to put forward this theory of meathead somatics rather than the kind of wishy-washy, airy-fairy kind of subjectivity side of somatics that's been so prevalent in the space. If you're really pushing yourself, if you are going as hard as you physically can, you are going to access parts of your brain and part of your psyche that I just don't think you can get to in any other way. I think that there are certain parts of our brain and our headspace that can only be reached and can only really be experienced when you are really at that threshold, when you feel like you are drowning. Maybe it's the tism as well, but I really like the binariness of it. For example, if I want to run a sub 6 minute mile, I either do it or I don't. In the attempt, I know that I need to go as hard as I can. I need to run really hard. And by the end of it, I am going to feel absolutely fucked. I'm going to be dripping sweat. I'm going to be sucking air. I'm probably going to throw up at some point. But you either do it or you don't. It is just you and the animal body doing what it's meant to do. I think that being smart, being intelligent, and being in touch with your emotions and having a connection to that kind of higher self is really important, and it's a thing that a lot of us need to work on and develop. But I don't think it is necessarily more important than having a healthy relationship with your physical body. I think having a good grounding in your physical capacity, being self-aware, and knowing that if you need to, when the situations arise, you are able to kind of flip that switch and go really, really, really physically hard. I think that that is just as important as having self-awareness of your emotions and your responses and just generally being academically intelligent. I don't think one is more important than the other. I think that anybody who has done a genuinely hard, scary set of squats, anyone that has run a sub 25k, anyone that has held themselves to a really high physical standard and really committed and really pushed it and really sent it, they know what I'm talking about. When you are really up against that threshold, when you are at the limits of your physical capacities, you are just going to go to places that you just can't get to in any other way. And I think that is a really, really important experience for us all to have regular contact with. I've said before that I think that the best and most productive way to train is to chase performance goals. It doesn't matter what the thing is, just pick a thing and try and work your hardest to achieve it. Because the thing doesn't really matter. At the end of it, it's a nice reward to be like, oh, cool, I just did a 45-inch box jump. I just power cleaned my body weight. Picking whatever goal is motivating for you is great, but it is the work that you have to do along the way that is going to really be the reward in and of itself. Because in the pursuit of those goals, not only are you, if you're serious about it, going to organize your life better, you are going to get yourself more structured, and you are going to take things more seriously, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. You're going to have to push yourself to places that you have never thought possible. And I think that that act of going to the edge, going as hard as you can, coming back down and being like, holy shit, that was really cool. I think that is more important than any PR or any number on a scale. I think that this quote from Mao Zedong actually really sums up my argument very well. It's the classic, civilize the mind but make savage the body. You can't have one without the other. They're like two sides of a coin. The brain and the body need to be both being pushed, being stimulated sufficiently if we want to have what I would consider to be a good life. If you're just a dumb meathead and you are completely cut off from your emotions, you are emotionally constipated and you have no awareness of the world around you and you just don't have anything going up between the ears, then yeah, you do have work to do. But also, if you're a pencil neck who can recite the periodic table, but you get out of breath walking up a flight of stairs, you also have work to do. I think that in a culture that places such high value on the intellectual and on the mental side of things, I think that getting back into the body, getting out of your head, really embodying that physical practice is one of the best things that you can do for your overall quality of life and just like how good you feel about yourself on a daily basis. Okay, so that is the video, guys. A bit of a weird one this week, but it's just something that's been on my mind for a little while. If you want to test my hypothesis, go out, after you finish the video, go out, run a mile as fast as you can, as hard as you can, and see what kind of headspace that you get into at the end. Go have a sick week of training, guys. Check out my Instagram in the description below. If you have any questions, any comments, thoughts, feedback, pop them in the comments. If you want some help getting started with training, online coaching spaces are available right now. So you can fill out the link in the description below to put in an application, or you can just message me on Instagram. That's also a good way to reach me. Don't be a dweeb, go do some big lifts, and I'll see you next week. See you later.